Nissan have announced big V8 engine is officially dead. They actually a real four-wheel drive manufacturer anymore.
The Ford Ranger now has a hybrid variant. Two areas I want to look at: how it's going to go off-road and how it's going to go towing. Interesting to see how the new hybrid vehicle goes off-road if full internal combustion engine Ranger just goes into Fruit Loop mode once the alternator dies.
So much of these new vehicles rely so much on electronics, and it's kind of scary considering what we do with them, really.
G'day and welcome to another episode of Beers in the Shed. I've got Jesse on the other line and we have some huge breaking news. Ford have announced the release of their hybrid electric dual cab Ranger, and Nissan have announced the Y63 Patrol, the V8, is officially dead. To find out why and hear our opinions, keep watching. But for now, Jesse, you there, mate?
Yeah, mate, I'm here.
Mate, I've got a cold beer. We've got plenty to get through. What say we get into it, eh?
Yeah, mate, I might crack mine and let's get started.
Australia's best-selling vehicle, the Ford Ranger, now has a hybrid variant. Jesse, the two areas I want to look at for this new plug-in hybrid electric Ranger are how it's going to go off-road and how it's going to go towing, because they say it can still tow 3.5 tonne.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, isn't it, mate?
It is, mate, it is. Now, Ford have just announced this recently. They have a plug-in hybrid version of their popular Ranger. Now, it comes with a 2.3 litre EcoBoost engine, and it's also got an 11.8 kilowatt battery with a 75 kilowatt electric motor. It's clearly geared towards tradies and people who use their vehicle Monday to Friday, getting to and from work. For example, they've said that you can charge it off a standard 240 volt plug, and there's also 240 volt outlets in the tray for running power tools off the 11 kilowatt battery. So it's clearly designed for tradies to use a bit more of a fuel efficient ute. But just on that point that you said there, Jesse, about how's it going to go in the bush, it's a really interesting one, because the CEO of Ford Australia and New Zealand came out and said that these vehicles are a hugely capable tool for work and off-roading. It's still got the same off-road prowess, I guess, that the Ford Ranger has and has been proven over the last few years. But how will it go in the bush? I mean, I don't imagine, Jesse, there's many hybrid vehicles out there that have mud in the plugs to the battery and things like that. So, I mean, are we going to see these in Cape York?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. And I read somewhere too in the press release that the battery is actually underneath the tub. So, like, that's not really a great spot if you're touring. I'm sure stones and stuff are going to flick up there. And like you said, what happens if dirt or mud gets in one of the plugs or something? But for what you said, for trader use around town, you're going to be cheaper on fuel. And if you can run your power tools out the back of you, that's a positive, I reckon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. I mean, I'm sure there is a market for fleet vehicles and tradies to use these. I'm dubious as to how a hybrid electric Ford Ranger will go out in the bush. For light off-roading, sure, but what happens if you've bought your dream dual cab ute and you want to go camping with the family on the weekend after taking it for the Monday to Friday, and there's a couple of river crossings and a couple of bog holes you have to drive through to get to your dream spot with your family? Sure, it might do it just fine, but in 6 months down the track and you get mud in the wiring looms, or I can't imagine there's too many hybrid vehicles with mud on their batteries, mate. Just how's it going to go long term? I guess there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. And from the Cape, mate, you saw as well, we had a Ford Ranger in the convoy that did an alternator, and it lost its brain when that happened. And that's just an alternator. There's so many electrics in these modern vehicles that it'd be interesting to see how a hybrid goes after a couple of years of off-road work. Now, I'm sure there'll probably be a lot of people watching, Jesse, and you'd agree that a lot of people who are buying a hybrid version of this Ranger probably aren't going to do long-term touring and things like that. But I mean, Ford are coming out and saying that it's still going to be capable off-road, so you'd expect it to do the same things. Is it going to last?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, I guess, really. And the only thing we can do is sort of wait and see. Like, it's definitely got its place. I do agree. And I'm more for hybrids over a complete EV vehicle. And I do believe if the EV side of it does stuff out, you can still drive just on your engine. But it's a smaller engine, obviously, too. It needs that boost. But, yeah, I'm keen to see in a couple of years how these things are still going, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. And the other area that Ford have mentioned, it can still tow 3.5 tonne, which, as you know, Jesse, putting 3.5 tonne behind a dual cab ute, in my opinion, they definitely don't love it in the vehicles that I've towed with in the past, putting 3.5 tonne behind one of these. Not to mention, as you said before, the battery for it is right up the back underneath the tub. Now that's a fair bit of weight behind the rear axle. I wonder how much that's going to affect the payload. I mean, you're looking at an 11.8 kilowatt battery, Jesse, so let's assume it's over 100 kilos. Over 100 kilos behind the rear axle. The payload of the vehicle will probably be different because it has to carry that big battery, and then you're going to put a 3.5 tonne van behind it as well. I'll probably stick to what my grandfather used to say, which is you should never tow anything heavier than what you're towing it with. What do you reckon about that, mate? 3.5 tonne towing.
Yeah, exactly what you said. It scares me what some of these new modern vehicles are rated to tow. Yeah, if you get the wobbles up with something heavier than what you're driving behind you, it is quite scary. And 3.5 tonne is a lot for a standard dual cab that's not running on electricity and all that sort of stuff. I'm not too sure how all that works, but I'm assuming it's going to make it work pretty hard. So, you know, on paper, as you said, it can do it on paper, but paper and real world are completely different things. I think it'd be actually pretty cool. Maybe if we could get our hands on one of these things and do even a test in the real world, that'd be a good video, I reckon, mate.
Definitely, mate, particularly if this is the future of four-wheel driving in Australia. If we're going to be seeing more hybrids, it would be good to see how they stack up against current internal combustion engines on the market, and I reckon it would be a good test for sure. Maybe we're being too cynical. I mean, when the turbos were starting to be added to diesel vehicles back in the day, a lot of people said, oh, it's just another thing to go wrong. So in years to come, maybe this will be the standard. But for now, I'm dubious as to how bush-proof these plug-in hybrid electric utes are going to be. Ford are obviously pushing the frontier with plug-in hybrid electrics from a big manufacturer. Toyota are kind of dipping their toe in with their mild hybrids in the Prado and the Hilux. I actually saw a BYD Shark being tested here in North Sydney the other day as I was driving to work, mate, and it made me do a bit of a double take because there's not many of them around and they're just kind of testing to see how good they would be in Australia. That comes with a 1.5 litre turbo petrol engine, and it's also a plug-in hybrid like the Ford Ranger. BYD obviously trying to get into the dual cab ute market that is so big in Australia. So interesting to see how that goes, but we're seeing Ford, we're seeing BYD look at it, and we're seeing Toyota dip their toe in as well. Is this the future of four-wheel driving? Jesse, what I'd really like to know is what you guys at home think. Are we on the money? Are we going to see many more hybrid vehicles as the future of four-wheel driving in Australia, or are they just not going to last? Really keen to hear what you guys think at home, because we're the ones who are going to be buying these vehicles and seeing them on the road. So let us know what you reckon.
Righto, Jocko, I reckon that's enough about hybrids now, but while we're on hot topics, I've got a pretty hot topic here. Nissan have announced the Y63 Patrol, and the big news is the big V8 engine is officially dead. And heaps of people are throwing a bit of shade at Nissan, saying, are they actually a real four-wheel drive manufacturer anymore?
Throwing shade at Nissan, mate. Never heard of it. What have you got for us?
Yeah, mate. Obviously, the big VK56 V8 engine, the one we know and love, especially your old man, he definitely loves his one. They can be a bit thirsty, but they seem to be a good, reliable thing. It's officially dead, zit, no longer. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of hate thrown around, you know, the V8 getting axed, but a twin-turbo V6 with a 9-speed automatic transmission, you're probably going to get better fuel and it's going to drive super nice. So is it really a bad thing, mate? What do you reckon?
Yeah, mate. I mean, there's a few specs in the new Y63 that aren't too dissimilar to a Range Rover. And being I guess a BMW GU owner and dropping your kids to soccer all the time, maybe a new Nissan Range Rover is what you need as your next vehicle, mate. Do you reckon, has it actually been developed to suit Australian conditions as well? Obviously, Nissan are a global brand. They have a big market, but I'm keen to see how the new Y63 goes in Australia, mate, because the Y62, I guess, is proven, as you mentioned, that mighty engine that they've got, a little bit more thirsty, but Graham has said still plenty of power, more than he'll ever need, and tows just fine. Yeah, it uses a little bit more fuel, but fully loaded, it's not that much more than a diesel 200. It'd be interesting to see how the Y63 goes in Australian conditions, mate. I'm dubious about this one, but I reckon it's a pretty cool looking vehicle, and I guess smaller displacement, higher strung engines seem to be the future, mate. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. I reckon it could give the 300 a run for its money if it proves out to be reliable in Australia.
Yeah, mate, there definitely is some similarities between the new Y63 and the 300 series. We've got some figures here. The Land Cruiser 300 makes 227 kilowatts and 700 newton meters, and the Y63 beats it by 90 kilowatt. It puts out 316 kilowatt, but 2 newton meters less torque. The Y63's only got 698 newton meters, so that'll definitely be interesting to see, but it might have a little bit less torque, but it's actually got a 9-speed automatic transmission, so pretty much whatever you're doing, there's going to be a gear for it. I reckon that'll be super nice in low range, and if you're towing stuff, and could be good for fuel economy. You know, once you're on the highway and you get up to cruising mode, you could just click up into 9th gear, lower the revs, and just cruise along, not labouring too much. Anyway, that's enough of us rambling on about this thing. I'm keen to see what you guys reckon. So chuck in the comments below. What's your thoughts on the Y63? What do you think about the V8 getting axed? What do you think about this new 9-speed transmission? What do you think about the twin-turbo V6? I'm super keen, so throw them below. We'll have a read through and maybe chat about it next Beers in the Shed.
Definitely, mate. Or maybe we'll have to get a Y63 and put it head-to-head against a 300. See which one comes out on top.
Marta Cars for Cancer have done it again with their biggest ever lottery. Now let me take you through the list of prizes that you could have sitting in your driveway. This is a Ford F-150 Lariat, the ultimate in towing vehicles, can tow over 4.5 tonne, and speaking of towing, check that bad boy out. Now this is a Vacationer Rough Rider, a true off-road caravan. Imagine the places you could set up camp in that thing. And if that wasn't good enough, you could win $70,000 worth of cashable gold bullion, taking the total prize package to over $400,000. But all you'll need to pay to enter this amazing lottery is only $30. Now, how cool is that? Imagine all this sitting in your driveway could literally change your life. Now remember, tickets are limited and they often sell out really fast, so get your entries in well before November 13.
Recently, our Cape York adventure went up on YouTube, part 2 of our teletrack trip, where we took the Young Veterans Parenti, your BMW powered GU, and a bunch of good mates up to Cape York. And mate, let's just take a minute, because it was a pretty insane adventure. I want to reminisce a bit. We had a bunch of questions asking a couple of different things about what happened, what went on behind the scenes. So mate, I'm sure you've got a couple of untold stories, and I've got some too. So what do you say we just chat about that for a bit?
Yeah, mate, that sounds good. That trip was the best Cape trip I've ever done, definitely.
Definitely, mate. Me too. And unfortunately, we had a few dramas with the Ford Ranger, mate, and there was a fair bit that went on off camera just to get that vehicle up to the tip. It did an alternator, as you guys saw, but one thing that was interesting about that vehicle, once it did the alternator and we didn't have a spare, the amount that just went wrong with that vehicle, it pretty much, you'd probably agree, Jesse, just lost its brain once that alternator died, or once the battery voltage got low. Which is why earlier I mentioned it's going to be interesting to see how the new hybrid vehicle goes off-road if the full internal combustion engine Ranger just goes into Fruit Loop mode once the alternator dies. We actually just had to flat tow that vehicle once it got a bit of water in the fuel as well. And we pulled the rear prop shaft out, being an auto, as you know, a good thing to do, but I towed it up to Bamaga with the big Parenti. It doesn't need an alternator to run. And when the battery would get really low and the vehicle would start losing its brain, we'd pop the bonnet of the Ranger, we'd pull the battery out from underneath the passenger seat of the Parenti. I'd put the battery in the Ranger, then take the Ranger's battery and put it in the Parenti whilst it was running. Josh and I had to do that probably 3 or 4 times on the drive up. It definitely made the trip up to the tip just that little bit longer, but we were glad that we could actually get Joshy up there. And of course, Cape York mechanics fixed the vehicle quick smart, drained the fuel tank, got some new fuel in it and changed the alternator, and she was good to go. Didn't have any other problems after that.
Yeah, mate, that was quite the effort for you to drag that all the way up the top there. Parenti was probably the big MVP of that trip, you know. That wasn't the only car it towed either, and Nolan sort of was the start of a few problems for everyone. We camped at Nolan's for the night after we crossed, and I even had to change an alternator there. It was a little bit sad for the whole of the teletrack, and then it just went kaput just before the crossing. So I just bridged my 2 batteries together for the last little bit of track, and the crossing did that, and I changed the alternator at camp. So much of these new vehicles rely so much on electronics, and it's kind of scary considering what we do with them, really.
A couple of comments here, mate, just on that episode. And of course, we had Liam Late, who said, good to see Jocko driving something other than a Hilux. I agree. And mate, as you know how much I've been talking about Land Rovers, it's almost like I've found my long lost love. I've got a thing for them big time. And just after doing the trip in the Parenti, I don't think my time with Land Rovers is done yet. As you know, Jesse, we have other plans with Land Rovers. So stay tuned, because I'm not going to be driving a Hilux for a little while. We've got other vehicles to play with, mate. Plenty of other different makes and models.
Yeah, you're definitely a full-on Land Rover bloke now. And as I said to Jock every time he pulled up or he pulled through a creek and he was dirty, he was filthy, he had red dust on him, I said, mate, you look at home in that car. And he was smiling the whole trip. So it definitely suited you. There's another comment here, and the bloke's pretty much answered his own question. $15,000 BMW engine swap, and you got electric tape in your steering wheel. 100%, mate. I spent all my money on the engine swap. Those steering wheels, they're hot property. They always stuff out in the patrols. The leather comes off. They're like $500. And I know I need one, but I just can't bring myself to spend the $500 on a steering wheel. Like, it's literally not going to get me any further up a track or make the car go any better. So I'm just running the Lecky tape for now. Keep retaping it every now and then, and it'll do.
Yeah. Your mod priorities, Jesse, I've known you for a long time. They are, if it makes the car go better off-road, I can justify it. If it's just a comfort thing for me, nah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. My GQ doesn't even have a stereo in it, man.
Speaking, mate, of things that do work, Dash still said, what engines are in the Defenders? I assume he's talking about the mighty Land Rover Parenti. Of course, as you know, it is the Isuzu 4BD1, mate, the 3.9 litre. Just a rugged old engine. You really know it's running because the vibrations shake through the steering wheel and your hands have pins and needles by the end of a long drive. But that engine and that vehicle was outstanding. I don't need to keep talking about it, mate, because I was singing its praises the whole time. Didn't let me down the entire trip. It did not shut off for a while. I had to shut it off with the clutch, but you don't need to worry about that, mate. It just wanted to keep going.
And it ran on anything liquid pretty much. We drained the fuel bowl a couple of times and there was water coming out of there. I think there was some 4X, maybe even some up and go or something. But whatever we put in the tank, that thing kept going. It just goes to show how tough these old cars are. There's another comment here. I would like to see a tutorial on splicing the rope. It looks pretty sick. It is a handy thing to know. Obviously, you can tie a knot, but then you lose length in your rope. So maybe we should show the people that. Just a few little tips, because it's definitely a handy tip to have if you're out in the bush and you do break your rope.
Yeah, definitely, mate. It is handy. It's obviously something that's better to do at camp when you got a bit more time. If you're in a pinch, I've tied knots in just a humble bowline in the end of a winch rope just to get it out of a pinch. But obviously, as you said, not always ideal. You lose length, but it depends on the situation you're in. So yeah, maybe we could sit down with a couple of 4Xs, mate, and splice some rope. Have a rope splicing session out in the bush. That'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely, mate. That sounds good to me.
Now, of course, mate, just before we move on, we've got a comment here from Timothy Y63 That's a mouthful of a name, but there's something here that sparked my interest. He said, I suspect the ex-Army Land Rovers might be a bit more popular at auction in the future, mate. And that's probably the perfect time to talk about the fact that if you don't know already, I've been singing it from the hills, but the Young Veterans Parenti will be auctioned off through Grays.com very soon. And 100% of the proceeds will be going to young veterans, mate. 100% volunteer charity, so every cent helps. And it is going to be sad to see that thing go. I've fallen in love with that Parenti to no end, but hopefully it goes to a good home and the money is going to a good cause, mate. So I don't think my time's done with Land Rovers. I'm super grateful to have done that with young veterans and of course the guys who built it up like KLR and Kingpin Fab and Tough Dog and In-House Fabrication, everyone who helped. It'd be good to see that vehicle go to a good home and the money go to young veterans, mate.
Oh yeah, man, I couldn't have said it any better myself. Thanks to everyone that got on board and helped you build that thing. It was so much fun. It made the Cape York trip, and yeah, I hope that it sells for a good price so we can give a fair bit of money back to the Young Veterans Charity because they're doing awesome things.
Definitely, mate, definitely. Now, of course, there are a couple of things we mentioned from behind the scenes from Cape York, but is there anything you wanted to know about the trip that we didn't cover? Let us know in the comments below. Jesse, there's plenty of people need to get commenting on this episode because we want to know about what you think of hybrids, we want to know what you think about the Y63, we want to know what you think about Cape York. Lots to get through, and keep an eye out for the final episode coming up soon. Jesse, just on that, mate, let's quickly chat about what else we've been up to. Not just Cape York, not else just looking at new vehicles coming out. We've also been doing a couple of awesome trips recently.
Yeah, mate, we have been pretty busy. Obviously, I've been checking out some new cars too recently. I did a bit of a video on the new Triton versus the old Triton. They're not cheap as they used to be. If you haven't seen that, go and have a watch. It's actually pretty interesting. But one thing you guys are probably keen for is Clifford. He's been out and about. He's been at Glasshouse and also he's been down in Coffs Harbour with Jock and his new vehicle.
Yes. Remember that thing I said before, mate, about my time's not done with Land Rovers yet? As you know, stay tuned. That's all I'm going to say. Jesse, now it is time for my favourite part of Beers in the Shed, where we look at a couple of rigs and a couple of different setups from a bunch of young future four-wheel drivers who've built some cool little projects or some sick drawings. It is time for From Your Shed. Now, of course, if you guys see this section, you want to get one of your four-wheel drives, or you've got a mate with a sick build that you want to show off, use the hashtags 4Drive247Rigs, 4Drive247Fails, 4Drive247Kids on our social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and you could go in the draw to win a bit of a snatch voucher, mate, or a 4X merch pack. So let's get into it straight off the bat, mate. We have a bit of a cool build from a young fella. This is a coil converted 75 series, mate. This young fella, he's only 20 years old, and he's done a full rear end coil conversion with an 80 series setup. It already had the front done, it's mentioned here, by an engineering shop, but he's had a crack himself, done a whole bunch of rust repair, and he's also done what looks to be a bit of a falling setup in the rear with an 80 series rear end, mate. That is a cool build.
Yeah, mate, I think his old man even said he made the tray and bull bar and everything, and I like how he's extended the guards to keep his tyres covered and everything. Like, there's a lot of work and patience, and that good on you, mate. That is, like you said, that's one heck of a rig. Seriously
impressive. Well done, mate.
Yeah, mate, speaking of people who might need a mention or a bit of a shout out to give him a bit of a pick-me-up, our mate Lucas has got stage 4 cancer, the poor fella, and he is fighting super hard. He's a tough bloke. I reckon something that might cheer him up is if we send him out a bit of snatch gear for him to wear while he watches us, mate. Thanks for watching. Keep on watching and keep on fighting hard. Fingers crossed one day we can go out on the tracks with you, mate.
Yeah, well said, mate. And Lucas, if you're watching, keep at it, mate. You're crushing it. Well, Jesse, moving on to a couple of rigs, mate. And first up, this one is definitely in your wheelhouse. That is a weapon of a GQ.
Mate, that is an absolute weapon of a GQ. I quite like the green colour. That's I don't know if I'd be able to see over the bonnet of it, mate. That bonnet scope's pretty big, but judging by the Instagram profile here, it could be a chick's GQ. It says M's GQ. Good job on that. I reckon that thing looks super tough. And have a go at that video, mate. Look at the flex the thing's got. Good job, I reckon.
Now, mate, here's another one I want to bring up because I've still got a bit of a bone to pick with you. Kenny Austin has sent in some pics of their young son making a bit of a reenactment of you putting the lobster on its side, mate. My pride and joy American Toyota pickup, and you put it on its side within, what, 72 hours of driving it, but it looks like you and Sean standing around there as Lego figurines, not really sure what to do, and the poor lobster lying over on its side, mate. That is, that's pretty cool to make that out of Lego.
Well done, and maybe put a winch in that thing or get your other Lego mate to winch you back over and keep on wheeling, mate, keep on wheeling.
Definitely, mate, and we're not done with some rigs and moving into some green oval goodness. We've got this one from, looks like overseas, mate, from Callum Harris. Bit of a red, looks like a Disco 2 by the looks of things, and she is very tidy, wheeling up a bit of a gnarly rock step, and it looks wet and cold, but it's good to see a Land Rover getting out there and doing what it's built for.
Yeah, mate, they are a pretty impressive car. I like the shorter wheelbase, I like their coiled, and they've probably a decent engine, and they sound pretty good when you up them, and that one, yeah, mate, that thing looks like an absolute weapon. I kind of like the red maroon colour too, that's pretty cool.
Definitely, mate, definitely. And this one's got a TD5. Of course, the Disco's had a TD5 or a TDI in the diesel variants. If I were to get one, I'd probably want to get a TDI 300 with an automatic and maybe around the 1997 model. But even still, mate, Callum, that is an absolute rig, mate. And it's good to see you getting out and using the Landy.
The poor bloke's driveway, it probably looks like 101 Dalmatians, I reckon. A couple of oil drops, possibly.
Don't worry about it, mate. Don't worry. That's how you know there's oil in them.
Mate, this next one is making me a little bit hungry. Ruby Lowe has made a gunshot birthday cake.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that looks yummy. I'm hungry now.
Yeah, I like. Not only is the gunshot diorama very accurate with a couple of vehicles down. There's one stuck in a Malteser bog hole, mate. It looks delicious, and also there's a curly whirly there. Yum. There's Maltesers there. Yum.
There's a crocodile at the bottom, man. You know, so there's a crocodile with something in its mouth.
Now, of course, mate, we have some prizes to give away for these epic submissions. And if you want to get a prize for your build as well, make sure you send them in. We'll check them out. And you could be going home with a 4X merch pack or a $50 snatch voucher for the young future four-wheel drivers.
For my pick, it's going to have to be Kenny's 7-year-old son who's made the replica of the lobster rollover, mate. That is a cool Lego car. And he obviously watches the videos in detail, which is awesome to know too. So, mate, we're going to sling a $50 snatch voucher your way. Spend it wisely. For the rigs, we're going to give away a 4X merch pack. And I reckon No questions asked. That's got to go to M's GQ. It's a tough GQ. It's from Victoria. I love wheeling GQs in Victoria. And the best part I like is it actually gets used. So 4X merch pack coming your way, Em.
Of course, if you want to get in touch, we would love to hear from you. And the best way to do that is to follow along on all our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, YouTube. Use those hashtags I mentioned before if you want to get one of your vehicles in the shed show. Plenty of awesome stuff coming up, and make sure you keep an eye on all our social media channels for that. Apart from that, mate, I reckon we call it a day. I've got an empty 4X and I'm going to go work on cars for a bit. It was good to chat to you again, mate.
Yeah, mate, it was awesome to catch up. And yeah, I got an empty beer too, so I might go get a new one and continue working on the hoist.
All right, mate. Uru, I'll chat to you soon.
Have a good one. Speak to you.
Cheers.
Talk to you.